Well, welcome. What a pleasure to be here. My name is Rory Wilson. It's important to emphasise, really, that I'm giving a talk, but there's lots of people that work in the same research group that I work in. So we call ourselves SLAM. Recently we've called ourselves SLAM, Swansea Laboratory for Animal Movement. And there's maybe 20 of us in total, if you take the wider bunch. There they are there. We had to think of this new name because we used to be called SMART, which was Swansea Moving Animal Research Team, but we discovered there's another SMART in Swansea University. So we've gone to SLAM, and there are advantages. We're going to call the marine group Slam Dunk, and the big animals group Grand Slam, and people working in the Arabian Peninsula Islam, and so on and so forth. Anyway, off we go. What we do in SLAM is we study movement, animal movement in the widest sense. So that's movement, and actually so is that, by virtue of the lack of it. There are two problems with studying wild animals and the way they move. And the first is they don't like to be watched. And for anyone who can't read that, underneath it says bummer of a birthmark hall. So animals don't like to be watched and will actively avoid it. That's the one thing. And the other thing is, even if you can watch them, many of them don't behave normally when they are being watched. This is all thanks to Gary Larson, by the way. If you've never seen the book The Far Side, there's a couple of volumes of it actually, really worth getting. And yet, there are many things we need to know about animals, about wild animals, and these things can range from people wondering what caribou are going to do if they put an oil pipeline down. Are they going to be able to cross it? Are they going to be bothered by it? I mean, some animals are clearly not bothered by it. To issues like, this is one that we worked on a few years ago, the Arabian leopard. 160 leopards left. Everybody's shooting them because they thought that Arabian leopards eat livestock, and actually no one really knows. I reckon that some of the goats have got the answer sorted out. Other things like, for example, studying disease spread, the badger things, very prevalent. Rehabilitation, we've got a bloke doing a PhD on how rehabilitated badgers behave when they go in the wild, and how animals fit into the ecosystem. There's a million different reasons to study wild animals. The difficulties of observation are simply that you can't see animals all the time. It says, well, another blonde hair, conducting a little more research with that Jane Goodall tramp. It's quite simply very difficult to get unbiased observation from animals, from a lot of wild animals, and even, as I say, the ones you can see. So our approach, the approach used by a lot of SLAM members, is we use technology to do it, and we've constructed, we have the mainstay of what we do is a tag called the Daily Diary, and this is it. Those are two fingers there. There's Mark Holton, who's done all the electronics for this. That's the whole tag. And before you think Mark Holton has got giant hands, he hasn't. It is really that small. The approach is that you put this tag on your animal, whatever it may be. The concepts for a lot of these tags originally came from penguins, and now, of course, it's applicable to very many animals. You put the logger on the animal, it does all the recording, and then you can find out what the animal's been doing. What do we want it to record? This is the clever bit. It records sort of everything. These are a few of the things that it records. It's really not my place here to go into a huge technical description of what the tag does. We only need to understand that it has a huge memory, getting bigger all the time, and it can record on up to 15 channels at rates of over 800 times every second on each channel. So that's enough to make any computer squirm to have to deal with that data, and that's a problem in itself. But the idea is you can get an animal, and you can put this tag on, and there's a lot you can find out about it because of the clever way the tag is organised. So the sort of things that we put these tags on are things like sperm whales, and we have put them on. These are all animals we've been working with. So there's a tag on the sperm whale. This is an elephant seal. This is a Weddell seal. There's a great white. The problems of putting tags on the animals are not insubstantial, you might understand. This is an elephant seal going to sleep. This is a whale that you tag in passing. And if you try to tag a great white, which is what that thing is in passing, you can get really bitten, I'm told. So we get them to swallow the tag. Just dress it up with a piece of rotting elephant seal meat and then chuck it in the water and they'll swallow it for you. or cormorants in Argentina, or leopards, as we were talking about earlier, or sloths. This is a three-fingered sloth in Costa Rica. And for those of you who are into huggables are animals you would like to hug. I just need to say that of all the animals I've worked with, there is only one that will hug you back, and it's this one, and that's a three-fingered sloth. So if you need an animal hug, three-fingered sloth for one. Other animals like mouflon, this is work being done by Lama Kassan, doing work on her PhD at the moment in the Alps, and there they all are, trussed and having tags put on them. And this is the only shot we've got of a wild mouflon wearing a tag, because they move from this position to behind the next mountain in 1/5 of a second. So you need to be really fast. So its head's missing. But anyway, you get the gist. There was a head on this animal. Sunfish, we've had sunfish tag, we've had lemon sharks in the Bahamas, seals in Germany, condors, that's this rotting flesh-eating giant soaring bird, work done by Emily Shepherd in our group, and penguins, of course, which is my speciality, emperor penguins, and Magellanic penguins, which is a bird you find in Argentina. There's the tag on his back. So just gives you a broad overview of the sorts of animals that we tag. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you a few stories about some of the research that we've been doing, and they're a little bit disjunct, but I thought you needed to get a flavour of the sort of things we get up to. So it's story time now, and the first story is the story of the giant shark that thought it was a small bird. Okay? So I guess one of the important things about animal movement is the energetics of movement. Terribly important for us. Animals tend to move so that it's energetically not costly. It's like us just buying the C1 car instead of the giant Mercedes. That says, just jump, you fool, you don't have to go boing, boing, boing. That's Gary Larson again. And one of the things about our tag, our principal tag, the daily diary, is it gives us a measure of how hard animals are working in terms of energetics. And the way to find this out, or in fact the relationship between the data in the tag and how much it's costing the animal to do what it does, is we do this. Now this is a rockhopper penguin in a little box called the respirometer, and it's got a rolling road tuner, sort of conveyor belt, and it's walking on this. It's wearing a tag. See if this is going to work. And watch what happens. Here we go. Hello. This is very sexy. Like that. So there we are. Now he's walking because he can't do anything else. He's got a tag on his back. As he breathes in and out, his oxygen consumption is being measured, and his carbon dioxide production being measured as well. And when he's finished galloping up and down there for a while, we can then look at the relationship between the tag data and the oxygen consumed, and use that for wild animals, or wild rockhopper penguin in this case, to tell us how much it costs for a rockhopper penguin to do lots of things, break dance or whatever. When this work started, there was a team that went out to Buenos Aires Zoo, and they did a whole load of different animals. This oddler here is it's the dynamic acceleration component in the signal. It doesn't really matter. This just shows you that for all these animals, there's a nice relationship between the signal from the tag and how hard the animals are working in terms of energy. Because animals don't deal in money, they deal in energy. And the sort of animals that they looked at, or we looked at in that first set of trials, was ducks, muscly ducks, and then beavers, and then cormorants, and armadillos, great animals, armadillos, and skunks. And subsequent to that was the first work, and of course biologists are really sceptical lot. They say, well, just because it works with skunks and cormorants and armadillos doesn't mean it's going to work with cane toads. This is a cane toad, that's the green one's a cane toad. And now it's been done with amphibians, it's been done with cuttlefish, it's been done with turtles, it's been done with scallops. Even with scallops, it all works very well. It's recently been done with sharks, not as big as that. And so it's a very robust measure of how hard animals are working. And that's a good thing, because if we return to our first story, I should just say, you see this thing here in the corner? There's an iPad expert in the room. I discovered yesterday an iPad app called Paint or something, where you can do all sorts of silly cartoons, and you can export them by sending them to your email. So that's one of them, but it only worked as far as 3 emails and then stopped. So anyone knows how to fix that for me? I'd be really happy. Back to the story. The story is of the largest fish in the world, which is the whale shark. There it is. And it's about the fact that even though you're huge, there are good reasons not to expend more energy than you need. And so here it is, to give you an idea of the size of it. Here is a whale shark being tagged by Brad Norman. Here's my pal, and here's me pretending to tag it, keeping a really long way from the tail. They get up to the size of a bus, and they eat plankton. And when you first see a whale shark and you're snorkeling in Ningaloo Reef, as they say in Oz, and it's very hard when this bus comes towards you, with its mouth open, not to hyperventilate into your snorkel. And Brad, actually, the interesting thing about Brad is this picture was taken, it's not a picture you can take that often, and he said, why do I have to look like a shrimp, Rory? Just if I'm tagging them, I look like a shit myself. But the truth of the matter is, when you put a tag like this, the tag going on, it's got a whole buoyancy housing with it. And when you put that tag on, some of the time the whale shark just swims on, sometimes it just says don't like that, and there's a massive whack of the tail. So not the easiest animals to tag, but there are worse. So anyway, what do whale sharks do? So we put tags on whale sharks in Ningaloo Reef, and of course they do swim near the surface, as you saw, but they will also swim to 1,000 metres underwater. So there's very little known about what they do when they're spending a lot of their time in the deeper depths. And one of the things that came out of this work, if you look at this top line here, this is the depth, and you can see between about 63 metres and sort of 52 metres that it's going up and down in the water column. Sort of like 10 metres up and 10 metres down. Okay, this pitch you don't need to worry about too much. It basically just means that's the angle of the shark, comes out of the tag, and it tells you it's pointing up and then pointing down, pointing up and pointing down. And then the last thing that's relevant is here, and this is the lateral acceleration. And what this is telling us is the tail beat. So every one of these little blips up here is a tail beat, and the higher the blip, the bigger the tail beat. So actually what you see is here that when they go up, there's a lot of tail beating, and when they go down, there's no tail beating. Okay, so something funny is going on there. And more than that, I suppose, if you have a look at the speed of the whale shark against this measure for how much energy they use to go, to swim, the 2 types of options they have. One is just swimming, I'm going to swim at 50 metres or whatever, in a straight line, and I stay at 50 metres, and that's the blue line. That's the red line, and the other one is to go up and down and up and down, and that's the blue line. So in other words, the blue line, because it's lower than the red line, tells us that that simple action of going up and down is saving it energy. Okay. That's an interesting phenomenon, and after we discovered it in the whale shark, it seems that this option is popular with lots of other marine animals. Okay, so here's a weddell seal. There's the same wave pattern at 88, 90 metres for a seal, and you can see there's the flipper beats at the end of the body go when the animal's swimming up. And the same with sea lions, which are these things you see in circuses. Again, the same undulating pattern, the same pattern of activity. This is your great white shark, which swallowed the tag, basically. Exactly the same thing. They're going up and down by 25 metres, but they're doing exactly the same thing. And of course, the whale shark is doing exactly that. And the extraordinary thing about that is that these are all data that we've got using the tags, and people haven't realised this before. It's a really interesting and difficult thing to understand how a lot of these animals migrate so far without eating. Some of them, they cross the globe to go from one patch to another where they feed, and they can do it because they've got this very clever mechanism. And it transpires that people have known for a long time that teeny weeny songbirds, you must have seen them on the bird table, they fly away from the bird table, they go woo, 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 like crazy things. And what they do is they flap up and then they glide down, and they flap up and they glide down. And it's been known for a long time that This has been an energy-saving mechanism. So here's the schematic picture of what the birds do. And it's extraordinary to think that some of the smallest birds on the planet do it, and the largest fish on the planet does it as well. And in fact, what it's really doing is, because sharks are heavier than water, they swim up, and then just like an aeroplane or a glider, they're gliding down, and they're using their body and their pectoral fins as wings. So that's rather a fun thing that's been going on. And then here, incidentally, just to get into a picture with the birds, this is a blue tit doing its powering up, and look at that. It's not even, it just closes its wings completely, and it's got a caterpillar in its face. Yes, I wanted to get a film of it on YouTube, which is an extraordinary thing. Next time you see these small birds flying around, you'll see they actually close their wings and sort of go as they shoot through the air. So, and I've actually got an animation of it. This should give you an idea of, firstly, this is what it looks like when a whale shark does it. And this animation is derived entirely from data from the tag. So every tail beat, the depth, the angle, and everything else is derived from the tag, which doesn't have a camera on it. So this is just a virtual reality picture of what the shark is doing. So you saw in the first part, there's the first part of it where it powered up, and now it's gliding down. This is actually speeded up by a factor of 5, because everything whale sharks do, they do really slowly. But you can see those are the undulations coming in, you see? And they'll travel across ocean basins using this behaviour. So, rather fun. Now then, that's vertical movement. That's one dimension. That's an example of just one dimension. But understanding movement in a general sense, we have to understand 1 or 2 or 3 dimensions. I got that because I sort of thought somewhere in Star Wars, there was sort of, is it Star Wars or Space, the Final Frontier, they talk about movement in multiple dimensions, so I just put that in from Google. Movement, many of you will have seen this sort of thing. People that go for animal movement classically do it with some sort of telemetry. You know, they've got a pinger and there's an animal pinging a signal at you, and you say it's over there, and someone else says it's over here, and you triangulate on it, and you get a series of fixes. Now this is the movement of a camel, actually with a GPS collar on, taking a fix every 15 minutes. And you can see, yes, okay, this is where the camel has been. And as a biologist, you can say, that's really useful information. It is. We know that it's been hanging around by the ladies' loo here, and in Marks and Spencer's here, and I don't know, whatever. And that's quite useful. But if you want to understand the animal's behaviour and what it means, you need the finest scale possible. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Here is an example of an animal's movement. It's very like writing, I always think. Sort of like someone's written something here and someone's written something here. And what this all means and what the context of it is. No guesses for figuring out what it is. It's actually the movement of a human being. Okay, and the context will be clear when I show you the shop corridors. And this person has been told to shop for a few things. So this was the whatevers, and this was the whatevers, and whoops, wrong corridor. I'm going down next, I'm looking for the porridge oats. And this was where there was a phone call. And in the phone call, this person was told to stop the experiments that come out, and therefore immediately they come out. And you can see, when you understand what was going on, then all this becomes clear. That you're not going to dally on the way in, and that's because it's the magazine section or whatever. And it's exactly the same for animal movement. And if we have that sort of resolution, well, you know, movement's like writing. It becomes more meaningful as you get better resolution. Let me give you an example. I animated this for you. Imagine that you go out in the morning and on the beach there are some footsteps. I ignore these footsteps for a moment. We're going to put some footsteps, and here's your animal putting the footsteps in. I wonder how I do this. Do I just? I think I just do that. Watch the animal. There it is. Anyone get that? It did this. Okay, the quick brown fox jumps over the lake. That's the route it took, which happened to spell out the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And that's all very clear to you, and that's wonderful. If, however, if I were a biologist that accepted limitations in my resolution, I would say, I'm going to take a fix every 10 minutes, and that turns into this, right? And that doesn't say the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog anymore. It says dry or something. Okay? It'll still tell you something about roughly where the animal was, but the message has gone. And if we reduce the resolution still further, and we end up with something that looks like or something. Okay? So in other words, as a demonstration of how important fine resolution is, you can't get better than that. So the camel's eye view on it is poorly resolved movement is no substitute for the real thing if you can get it. Now, here's where I have to introduce a concept that is important in our tagging. It's the concept of dead reckoning. Now, dead reckoning, I did some of it there. Dead reckoning involves vectors and knowing the heading and the speed and working it all out. Basically, you need to know the animal's speed. So the tag must do that. I've done this, by the way. This ostrich riding thing, I've done this. It is crazy. I'm not joking. It's also quite disconcerting because while you're riding the ostrich, they can turn around and look at you. Which is anyway, so you need the speed, and you need the direction of the animal. And of course, if you're going to do it in 3 dimensions, then you need the height of the animal or the depth. I've not done this, by the way, and I never will. I can show you. So if you have these 3 elements, you can put it all together and you can dead reckon where your animal was. And here's an example of a dead reckon trace using harbour seals off Germany. Animal left started here and ended up here and went around over a few days and did this. And you can see every dive, and you can see that they were tracking the bottom and da-da-da. And the point about it is you do get that fine resolution which allows you to determine the details of the behaviour. Okay? And so with that, or armed with that, we can start to look really closely at the sort of things that direct animal movement, that make animals move the way they do. And of course, the question about what the fundamental things, what are the most important things in determining the way animals move the way they do, if you're going to ask that question, you've got to think like the animal concerned. You've got to think like a fish, or think like a bird, or think like the mammal, and it depends who you ask. Here's a really interesting case. 2 different animals, or perhaps it's the same animal, on 2 different occasions, with 2 different types of writing. And it will mean nothing to you until I do this. That is, and this. And show you the animals that are concerned. And this is a guanaco, just walking between the bushes. You're stupid if you walk through the bushes and you're a guanaco. And this is a young lady walking through the streets of Puerto Madryn in Argentina. And she's really stupid if she starts walking through people's living rooms. Okay. The point about that is that one of the prime descriptors of animal movement, and animal movement, let's face it, costs energy, therefore it's very relevant for the ecosystem, it's relevant for the animal, is the way the environment looks as the animal moves through it. And so here's a concept for you, and it's one of energy landscapes. And this transpires to be something really important. If you are wandering through the, I mean, I know this is Swansea terrain now. It's all like this all over. Quite often it's not supposed to be. You wouldn't want to walk through there, and you would be happy to walk along there, but not through the bamboo forest. And here you've got hills and sinking sand and all the rest of it, and you would say, well, you know, it's going to be hard work walking up there. But we don't think of any of these things anymore because this is where we live. I was disappointed to find this room was flat when I came in tonight. I thought I could talk about hills and energy landscapes. But actually, we don't like anything that makes our life hard, so we make everything flat. And where it's not flat, we'll put a road in it and drive up it. So we don't have a proper connection with the way the landscape modulates the type of energy we expend anymore. But if you think like a bird, and glider pilots do in some instances, you get things like this. This is rising air in columns of hot air from particular places which go thundering up, and glider pilots use them. They go up in a thermal and they come down, glide to the next, and go up and down as well. So that's one example of an energy landscape. And actually, even in terrestrial systems, there are all these types of landscapes. This is an animal I designed, which is intended to look like anything between an aphid and a zabi. Now, you don't know what a zabi is, but you can imagine it. And so, the types of things that are important, if you look at this top one here, is if you have something in the landscape in which you sink, that in there, believe it or not, is a moose in the snow. That is hard work. Okay. Here is the norm, which is a kudu, walking over a straightforward environment. This is where you have grass and you have to walk through, you know, there's a super straight. This is where you have to walk over, that's rather a poor photo, sort of a rocky surface going up and down the side. And then you've got hills, which are another type of energy landscape, and the final type of energy landscape, and we spend a lot of our time building these for animals, is something you cannot get up. Okay, and I use this as an example. I found this in Google, and I decided to blow it up because it is the craziest goat on the planet. I mean, if I were on that place, I wouldn't move until the helicopter came, but it's just wandering along looking for grass or something. Anyway, so that's the terrestrial environment. But you do also need to be aware that if you're a bird, and when you get out and tomorrow when you look at the gulls, just take a look at the way they use the air. The air is very often not visible for what it is, but here it is. And these are the hotels on the front of in Brazil, and just by chance, the wind and the direction and the vectors of the wind have been visualized by the moisture coming in from the sea. And what you can see is, it comes in, hits the front of the hotel and gets pushed up at a huge rate, and then buckles over and goes over the other side. In other words, if you're a bird and you want a freebie, go there. If you want to die, go around the back, because you'll be plunged into the ground. So that's a really important thing. And the other important thing is, whilst we're on the subject of wind turbines, you might think wind turbines present a problem for birds if they get whacked by the blades. But ask a bird about it, and he says, you don't want to be flying behind a wind turbine, mate. The turbulence will kill you. So in other words, the virulence or the health or the resistivity of the landscape is hugely variable for birds. And here's an example of some of the data from the condor work that's going on. And you can see here, I'm going to make it move in a second, that this is the track of a condor, tracked using one of our tags. And you'll see that what it's done is, and I'd like you to have a look at the movement pattern in it as well. What it's done is, it's gone up in a thermal, just like those glider pilots did. You see that? Red means it's going up, it's going round in circles. Then it gets to the top of the thermal, and then it glides down into the end to a low place. So in other words, one of the fundamental things about animal movement, if we want to understand how animals are interacting with the environment, is understanding the energetic consequences of the way the environment is shaped. And in an effort to get a hang on this, for gulls around Swansea, because I reckon, and I'm sure about this, you watch them, the wind comes in from the sea, hits the houses in the front, and they get a freebie. They're not flapping, they just glide along in there. It's really easy. In still air, herring gull has to go down. You know, it's not transported by God or anything. You know, they've got to wait, so they go down. But if they choose to be in the right areas, they'll be transported. And one of the tricky things for biologists is to figure out where exactly they're getting their rising air and the sinking air, and how the time might shape the whole population of the gulls. So the way this is being done is with a remote controlled plane, a glider. You can turn on the power when you want and turn it off, and you take the daily diary, you take it off an animal and you put it in the plane, and then you go to somewhere in Swansea and you map it. And when this went on, there's a girl called Harp Laceborn doing this as an MSc, and because I've flown this plane, she said, Rory, can you come and fly the plane around here? I want to map the air. And the wind's coming in from this direction. I don't know if you know where this is. This is the pier that comes out at the bottom, sort of there-ish, quite close, or is it there? Anyway, and what happens is the wind comes in, because there's a vertical wall here, hits it, goes up, and bounces over the other side. And what the gulls do is they fly along up and down here, getting a freebie, and then go along the sand dunes and back. And so Harv wanted to map where the air was rising. So she said, Rory, make the plane fly around in a circle. So I flew the plane from here, around to here, made it gain height, and then I let it glide down here. And you can see where it's white, where it's yellow and white, that's rising air. You can actually see the track of the plane went up. Where it's blue, it's sinking air. So that mapped it out really well. What I'm not telling you is that I did this for about 15 minutes, rather worried, because the tide was out, but even when it's out, it's still pretty horrid and deep down this side, and then it ran out of battery and landed itself down there as the tide was coming in. And the tide was 50, it's so tense, 50 centimetres away from the wing of the plane. And I said, we can't leave it, it's got 1,000 quid worth of kit in it. He said, well, you can't go down there. It's about, I don't know, 10 metres, I guess, 30 feet. Anyway, we found a really old rusty ladder underneath an overhang. So the overhang was like this, and the ladder was like that. And I was fairly certain I was going to die, and I would have been famous in the newspaper. But I got the plane, and I got filthy doing it. And then I went out there one more time after that, and so nearly crashed it again, I said, I'm never going again. But anyway, this just gives you an idea of how hard it is to try and map the vagaries of the air for birds. And this also gives you an idea, whilst you think as a really heavy terrestrial thing that never has to think about the consequences of the air, if you can live on rising air, and the difference in the energy you expend to travel is more than 5 times if you're on rising air rather than sinking air or stationary air. Take a look at this. The trees in winter, this is a smoke plume to find out what the air does. It just goes through them. Okay, so no rising air from trees in winter. Trees in summer, the smoke hits them and gets blown over them. So if you're a kite, I mean a kite, not a, the flying fluffy kite, not the string kite. If you're a kite, well, you get lots of freebies in the summer, and make sure you don't go downwind behind a tree in winter because there's a lot of turbulence and the wind goes straight through. These are all things that birds know. They all know this. And I just felt you should know today because it gives you a bit of insight into the way they have to operate. Okay, other things that determine the writing, the way animals move. Foraging, that's one of the prime things, the way animals forage and the way they search for things. So I'm going to tell you the story of the albatross without a torch. You think I'm delirious? It's true, but I'm not delirious for this moment. So I'm going to tell you a story about the bird with the biggest wingspan in the world, which is the wandering albatross, royal albatross, very similar, 3.8 metres. It's a really big bird. And they're very enigmatic because they spend about 6 days at sea. This is their nest on Possession Island. There's a number of their nests. And what we know about wandering albatrosses is that they go off for 6 days and they catch a lot of squid and they come back and they give it to the chicks. What poorly detailed studies of wandering albatross foraging habits have told us is that typically they fly for long periods during the day, sometimes landing on the water, and then during the night they spend a long time sitting on the water, and then they'll fly again during the day. So how does that work? Well, here are the results from the tag. It's not terribly important. What is there to see here? Really, nothing at all. Let's just animate it. This is the wandering albatross flying. So it flies for maybe 180, 200 kilometers, lands on the water for sort of 5 or 6 minutes, and then takes off. Okay? And that is the norm during the daytime. And that's fine, because what we think they're doing is they're feeding on very rare prey. We know squid is very rare in the Southern Ocean. And in fact, if we look at little stomach temperature pills, which we give them to swallow, which measure the temperature, because the stuff they eat is like ice cream. You know, you get ice cream head and stuff. If you had a temperature sensor in your stomach when you're eating ice cream, it would go down and say, he's eating ice cream. Wandering albatrosses eat ice cream, or the fish equivalent, or the squid equivalent all the time. And so we can look at the times when these birds are eaten by looking at the way the stomach temperature drops. So yes, they're dropping during the day, at these sort of couple of hour intervals. That makes perfect sense. They feed on really rare squid. That's fine. And there we go. That's it. Very simple story. And if that were just the case, we'd all go home happy, feeling we've got the wandering albatrosses measure. However, we also know that during the period of night when they stop, and this is where, as a scientist, you seriously think about fixing your results, they're still eating. Okay, so you can see these temperature drops here. So during the night, when they're not flying, when they're not searching for squid that are supposed to be, 100 miles apart, they're still eating. So what's going on there? Like squid are saying, hello, eat me? Well, this is happening at night. Let's look at the tag traces. So this is a section of what happens at night. Now, if you look at this, this is the compass heading identified. And then you saw on the previous one, the compass heading was sort of more or less constant. In here, what this means is they're spinning round and round and round and round obsessively, except for now and again, they'll stop. And they'll dip forward and they'll grab something out of the water. And then they'll spin round and round and round again. Crazy spinning albatrosses for periods between, well, in our data set, for between 40 seconds and I think 6 hours 40 minutes. That's a long time to be crazily spinning round. There's the squid, and there's the squid. So they're clearly eating. So what do we think is happening? Well, let's have a look at this in more detail. This is the nighttime period, and If this is going to work, we'll just blow it up and blow it up further. Here's an example of a dead reckon trace with all the writing showing all these crazy spins going on by the bird. So something funny going on. What do we think is happening? Well, it's like this, you see, and they only do this at night. In places in the ocean where there's a lot of productivity, you get bioluminescence. Bioluminescence, I've seen it so strongly that you can agitate the water and you can actually read a book at the black of night because it's so bright. And what we think is happening is they find these places of great bioluminescence and they swim round and round and round, agitating the water, and they make a ball of light. And the squid, because they're rather like moths and a bit stupid, say, "It's beautiful," and they swim out to the depths to the albatross, and then says, "Squid, ha," and eats it. And so what albatross is actually doing is they're jigging for squid using environmentally friendly light, by the way, and using a technique that actually, there's plenty of bioluminescent organisms, there's one of them, that is actually used by professional people who actually fish squid. You know, but what the professionals do is they get their own blinking light and they shine it in the water and the squid says it's beautiful. But albatrosses do it without the toilet. So that's rather a cool story, don't you think? Thought you'd like that one. Okay. Well, whilst we're on the subject of squid, I'll tell you about the story of the penguin who decided he didn't like squid and why penguins shouldn't like calamares. Okay? So, the important thing about being able to do energetics is if you understand how much it costs an animal to do something, you can also understand what's a good thing to do and what's not a good thing to do. So here's a 3D trace of a penguin, a single dive, doing this, okay? And here, in these 2 points, is where the bird caught squid, or caught prey, in fact fish. And you'll notice that he caught fish on both occasions when it was going up in the water column. Okay? I'm going to show you why I'm not delirious about this, and I'm not just thinking, penguins do eat stuff, far from that, so how would I know? There are obvious things you can see when a giant panda eats, and when a great white eats, certainly when it's eating the service, or a hamster eats. Okay, that's easy. There are plenty of animals that will not eat in public, and a penguin's one of them. So this is how you do it. You determine how they feed by putting a tiny sensor on the upper beak and a magnet on the lower beak, a small one, and you measure magnetic field intensity, which decreases every time they open their beak. So that when you get your tag back and you have your data for dive depth against time here, this is what's happening. Penguin underwater, swims to the top, swims along the surface, swims down again, all fine. This bit you say, that's funny, anomalous. And then you put the beak bits in, and you say, oh, funny that, the beak's been opening and closing. And in fact, what has actually been happening is this. No idea how long it took me to animate this. So I want you to appreciate it's very quick, and I had to make the penguins eat all the fish, and actually there are 3 left. And if you ever use PowerPoint, it's a horrible mess, so they're staying. And so that's prey ingestion at depth, and that incidentally is what happens when they come to the surface. You can actually see them breathing, which is rather fun. Now I know the cynical of you will be saying, well, they can open their beaks for many reasons other than eating fish. So I feel I need to just clarify that for a second. So we're going to take one of these little things out and blow it up. So this is what it looks like. This is a penguin eating event. And the first thing to note is this is the snap. We've done this in the zoo. If they ever miss, that's all you get. But if they swallow something, the fat bit of the fish goes a bit, I have to open their lips a bit wider to get it through there. Okay, and then this bit, see all those little hillocks? That is where the penguin is straight swallowing the fish and it goes down. Okay, so those are the culprits. So you can see very clearly that it's been swallowing fish. More than that, of course, because penguins only open their beak as wide as they need for the size fish. If you look at the area under the curve, you can tell how big the fish is. So that's a cool thing as well. That's just a zoo regression of fish size against how much the beak has been opened. And more than that, and this is where it gets really cunning, you can even tell roughly what type of fish it is. So if you look at these 2 signatures, this is one fish, and this is another fish. And the first one is a big, chunky Sylvester Stallone type of fish called a greenie, and that would be, you know, when people eat apples, they have a big mouth and so on. And this is a spaghetti Woody Allen type fish. And, you know, when people eat spaghetti, that's what they do with their mouth, and that's exactly what penguins do with their mouth. So you can get a pretty good idea of the sort of fish that penguins are eating by just looking at the sea. And so, armed with that, I'm going to show you about catching squid and catching anchovy. Now, you don't have to be terrified by this. This is just the depth over a single dive. This is the beak angle. And I'm going to put the, and these are the prey items here. So each one of these, that's breathing at the surface. Each one of these is swallowing a prey. So I put them in. And you can see that where the red is, you can see that it's been rising in the water column every time just before a caught prey. And the interesting thing is, if you look at these bits here, you'll see there's not much flipper beating going on. We can actually convert this into energy using our cunning regression that we did earlier. And you can see that actually to catch the fish, it doesn't cost them much. But when they descend the water column again to catch the next fish, they have to pay quite a lot. See these big peaks there? And that's because penguins are buoyant. Okay, they float. So a penguin just needs to point itself up and go shooting towards the surface, and it can use that speed to catch the fish. It's like you've been on a bike going downhill, except in reverse. But then it has to go back down in the water column. It has to work to get back down against this buoyancy. But because it can choose how fast it wants to get down, if you do the calculation, floating up and powering down involves 460 joules, and if they eat a 6-gram anchovy, they get 31,000 joules, ratio of 67 to 1. That's pretty cool, that's a good return. Now then, catching squid. Here's the penguin, here's the squid. Dirty squid tricks. This is the dive. This is just the flipper beating. Each one of these cycles is a flipper beat. And you'll see that there's these dips again and rises, except that it's the wrong way around. If we concentrate on this squid here, you will see that the penguin had to go down to catch the squid. So fish just think, oh, I'm a fish, I'm very stupid, wait for the penguin to come and eat us. Squid thinks, a penguin. It's an air-breathing animal, it's positively buoyant, the thing I need to do is go down. This will really give it a hard time. And that's exactly what happens. So the penguin, because it's buoyant, has to work really hard to go down and catch a squid. And if you do the calculation, there you are. If you do the calculation with power, that huge peak is a penguin swimming as fast as it can away from the surface, which is where all the nice air is, to catch a squid. And if you do the calculation, powering down and floating up involves 1,280 joules. You get hardly any energy from the squid because they're rather rubbish food. Bear that in mind next time you're having calamaris. And the ratio is 11 to 1 instead of whatever it was, 67 to 1. So a huge reason not to take squid. And it actually explains why it is that Magellanic penguins, which is the bird we're talking about, generally avoid squid even when there's plenty of them. Okay? So, another story. We're getting close to the end of the stories now. I know you're bored. Crikey. 1/4 that'll kill me. The story of the penguin who decided he'd rather be a pig. Well, because we've got these sensors on them, we can figure out how much they eat. Okay, the cost of movement, that's really important because you've got to pay for them by eating. It doesn't look like eating as much anyway, but animals have to do it. And food is really relevant because if you scale it up from penguins to ecosystem, well, they can have huge impacts. And what did we find? Well, you don't have to look at this too much. This is just individual cases. This is one bird that in 8 hours ate half its body weight in fish. And in fact, if you do the full calculations, Magellanic penguins, which are 4-kilogram birds, eat between 4.3 and 8.5 kilograms per foraging. That is the equivalent of me eating 5 buckets of hamburgers a day. So that's a lot of fish. And one of the big questions, because this is quite frightening stuff, one of the big questions is then how on earth can that happen? And if you want to know the full story, because you have to understand it in the ecosystem context, you've got to find energy in, energy out. And so here's where you have to do a little bit of work, as hard as it might sound, on digestive physiology. So, if you can measure when a beak opens, you can also measure when a bottom opens. And this is the bummometer. Well, the bummometer, there you are, there's a little magnet there and a little sensor there, just the same as the beak. You put it on your penguin, and every time they cut loose, that's what it looks like. So you can measure how often penguins poo. Now, it's not a lovely thing, but mainly it comes up to see it. And the interesting thing that came out of this is that if you have the beakometer and the bumometer of the penguin, and the daily diary, the rest of the technology, you can see they go up to sea here, they begin feeding here, and within half an hour, they've already got rampant diarrhea. Okay. So the conclusion from that is that penguins can really digest hugely fast. It's really the only solution to apparently eating so much. Let me just quickly show you how this works. Here's a penguin. I'm going to draw its insides very crudely. And in fact, I'm going to remove the penguin and just leave the insides. So here's one situation. Here's the fish. Very few fish. Here comes the fish. Imagine that penguin just eats one fish. Fish don't swim into the penguin's mouth. I should have done the other way around. Anyway, and so what happens is it gets digested, it gets cooked, and it gets really well cooked. At the end of it, you get a tiny little bit of penguin poo with a massive amount of energy that comes out of it. So when fish are rare, they take a lot of energy out of the fish because they spend a long time digesting. Now then, the other scenario is this. Lots of fish, penguin, because they like to live like Roman emperors, eat tons, the cooking's really quick, the potatoes aren't cooked properly, lots of poo, not very efficient. It doesn't matter for the penguin because it's got what it wanted, okay? The amount of energy it wanted. But it has taken a lot of fish out of the ecosystem. And the interesting thing about that is if you've got a colony of 100,000 penguins eating what are highly variable amounts per day, on a Tuesday, where there's hardly any fish, they can eat very few fish and they can take all the energy out of them and they preserve the fish stock. On the Wednesday, if lots of fish come in, well, you know, they can eat lots of fish and they can use little, you know, per fish, very little energy, and therefore they impact the stock, but that's okay because there's lots of fish. So, the end conclusion of this story is consumption by Magellanic penguins in Argentina alone is over 4,000 tons per day. But it very much depends. It can be between 1,000 and 4,000, depending on whether fish are abundant. And the interesting thing about that is the comparison that we often make between fisheries from people and fisheries from that animals take, marine mammals and the like, is that when we go out to catch fish, we will take 20,000 or 100,000 tons because that is what our quota is. But the predators will just take according to the density of prey in the area. And that may be the reason why, despite the fact historically there were many millions of predatory seabirds and marine mammals, that the fish stocks didn't crash the way they spectacularly do with us today. So this